Welcome to Spotcast, Season 3, Episode 11. We're discussing Star Trek Discovery, Season 3, Episode 1, The Hope That Is You, Part 1. Now, I was just saying to these guys before we started talking here that Part 1 sort of, I didn't see it to be continued at the end of the show, and the Part 1 kind of makes me think that, maybe the Discovery will show up. But then again, the show is called Star Trek Discovery, so, because it's not called Star Trek Burnham Lost in Space, right? For time. Dr. Burnham? No?
They really should have called it Feel the Burn, if you're asking me. That
Feel the burn.
Feel the Burnham.
Feel the Burnham. Oh, okay. All righty. Okay. All right. Anyway, my name is Tim Mitchell. I'm in Toronto, Ontario, and it is, I'm in the Eastern Daylight Time Zone, and Jonathan Kuline over there in Mississauga, Ontario.
Hello, and I also am in the Eastern Daylight Time.
Right, and way over there on the left coast, in the past, is Jaime Lopez Jr., and he's in. You can say hello, whatever.
So I'm in Seattle, Washington, beyond just being generically on the West Coast, which is the best coast.
Sorry, we're talking about ordering iPhones, so we're all messed up today. So we're time zone.
So how's it going?
Starved. Anyway, go ahead. Jaime Lopez Jr. in Seattle, Washington.
How's it going?
How's it going? And it's, he's in the Pacific Daylight Time Zone. Alrighty. And do we know what start date it is? We haven't done that in a while.
No, right? we haven't been updating the start date.
No, it's true.
I would like to clarify for our listeners, the episode's title is That Hope Is You, not whatever it is you said.
Oh, help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope?
Exactly one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A New Hope? And maybe I said A New Hope. I don't know.
The Rise of Burnham?
I didn't even. It's funny. I didn't even notice this episode had a title. So there you go.
Yeah, they didn't show it. I think usually we see it because it's up on Crave, but we'll get into that later in the episode. Our feelings about
Crave. She didn't wave
Crave.
the flag just for argument's sake. But anyway, that's I guess it's the license of a teaser is they can do whatever they want, right?
You got it.
Alrighty. So quick fact check here. So accessibility. I was talking about Paul Hudson's pronunciation of. We were talking about beta for beta and macOS for macOS and iOS for iOS. But he says, I can't even say it, accessibility, not accessibility.
In the Harry Potter Accio Firebolt sort of usage of ACC?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's just a Paul. I don't know. Sorry, Paul. Maybe it's just a Paul. He'll never listen to this show anyway. But maybe it's just a Paul Hudsonism. But yeah, it's just. I was telling you, like I was in a thing with him, and he was talking about accessibility a lot in the seminar he was doing, and yeah, that word kind of went what every time he said it. Anywho, let's get on with the show. Let's do some headlines. So we have Jaime Lopez Jr. up first.
Yeah, continuing the theme this season of the pandemic causes all sorts of weird things to happen. This one is just the same. So the new Disney Pixar movie Soul was originally planned for the theaters, but is now they're just leaning into it and saying, you know what? We're just going to make this available on Disney Plus this September. Sorry, December. I don't know why I said September. I mean December, the other December. So yeah, I think this one to me makes a lot of sense. I think it's a little bit different than something like Mulan that was, intended to be this big sort of tent pole, perhaps $1 billion maker in the theater sort of thing, where I think they struggled really hard with that one to figure out what are we going to do. They found sort of an in-between, like, all right, it's essentially like a movie rental or maybe, like as if you saw it in theaters, but the theater is your own home, and then later we'll make it part of Disney Plus. I think in this case for a family movie, and especially one that sort of leans more towards children facing, I think this makes a lot of sense to me that this is a good way to drive people towards the Disney Plus property. I think very similar to the way I was pretty pleased with what Universal did with the Trolls World Tour thing of like, oh, it was very clear, a good way to say, hey, kids, I need to work from home, so why don't you watch this movie for like 2 hours while I have this meeting?
Over and over, exactly. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And so I think this works perfectly, as opposed to like Tenet or Mulan or many of these other ones that we talked about, like Black Widow and stuff. Like, what are you going to do? Like, you're not going to have the kids watching that by themselves, so it doesn't work as well as like just very seamlessly enhance that part of the home life sort of thing.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I guess, do you think this means that the Mulan experiment was successful, I guess, right? I mean, what else are they going to do? I mean, Tenet lost money huge, right? Like by try and show in the theaters, but like 5 people in a showing at a time,
Yeah, I guess that's the real question is this a flag of surrender for movie theaters for the time being?
Well, could be. I mean, one of the bands I follow on Facebook was saying that they had a whole bunch of shows planned this year. They were doing a big tour, and I mean, they're not a big band. They're like a small sort of like a niche band, and they they sell out places like the Danforth. They'll easily stuff like that's like what, a 2,000 seat theater, I think.
Yep.
But they had canceled a bunch of shows, and now they've just announced, okay, here's the lineup, and it's like 2022 that they're saying. So I mean, they're hoping that there's going to be a vaccine by that time, I guess, right? But
I still have tickets to a few things that I didn't give up because they were small Canadian bands and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And all of them just keep getting pushed off. Like they were rescheduled from the spring to the winter, and now from winter to one of them is as far out. I think it's next November. I have tickets for a show already.
Yeah, I was just happened to pass my I think I was looking at my Ticketmaster or something like that. But the last show that I went to was when you and I went and saw Kevin Smith talk back in February. That was right.
Yep,
long time ago.
Yeah, I've been lucky in that I managed to go see 3 or 4 shows between January and February, and I think the last thing I saw was the first week of March at Scotiabank Arena in Toronto, which is 20,000 seats with it was the Lumineers. So there, but for the grace, I guess we go. It seemed to work out that it didn't seem like that was a spreader event or anything like that. It was sort of in the beginning stages of it getting to. It was a couple of weeks before the first set of lockdowns and stuff. But
do you remember last year we talked about this? It all started in Seattle. Seattle was ground zero, right?
As I recall, you are correct.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. First incidents in the Americas.
Do you wear that with pride? Does it say it on the sign as you come into town now?
I'll make a suggestion at the next
he has no idea.
virtual town hall meeting.
Yes. Jaime, you definitely leave the house in order to do that.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so what's next, John?
So this was an interesting one. This falls on the tails of exactly what Jaime was talking about. This was a movie I was looking forward to. So Eddie Murphy has been working on this sequel to the classic film Coming to America. It is humorously titled Coming to America, #2, and it is of course a sequel to this classic 1980s, or I guess it was probably late 80s movie. It was supposed to be into theaters, but in this continuing wave of things getting shuffled around, they've sold the distribution rights from Paramount Pictures to Amazon Studios for, according to Variety.com, they've sold it for about $125 million US. Wow. And they're going to stream it, and that is the way the movie's going to be distributed. Apparently, it is expected to premiere on December 18th, just in time for people to have time off over Christmas. And again, this was not small potatoes. They got the whole cast back together: James Earl Jones and Arsenio Hall and Eddie Murphy, and they are doing a whole big thing. And it was supposed to be one of the sort of most anticipated comedies of the year. And now, if you have your Amazon subscription, it's going to cost you nothing extra.
Yeah, that was a movie where Eddie Murphy and Arsenio Hall not only played the two characters, but they also played like the barbers and all that kind of stuff. Right?
Yeah, and they played a whole bunch of parts. Yeah,
that was the beginning. Before he did the was it Dr. Dolittle or whatever he did with the whole family.
Yeah, and the Clumps and all that stuff.
The Clumps. Yeah. Was the Clumps came out of Dr. Dolittle, or?
I can honestly say I did not. That was sort of out of my wheelhouse. He started doing more sort of family-friendly fare in the early 90s, and at the age that I was in my life and the age that he was appealing to did not align, so I didn't see many of those pictures.
I think the Clumps was the spin-off from the Nutty Professor.
Nutty Professor, that's what I'm thinking of. Yeah, where he played his whole family too, right? So But, all right, so
weird to see yet another one of these ones, and this also comes on the heels of the new Borat movie is going to be on Amazon as well. So I think we are now entering a pretty dark phase for movie theaters. It does not sound like it's going to be happening for movie theaters for quite a while.
Yeah, well, we still have drive-in movies and drive-in concerts and things like that, right? So, yeah. All right, so what do you got, Jaime? What's next?
Yeah, despite the weird clickbaity name in this Verge article, which we'll have in the show notes for those of you transporting it home, what it's really trying to say is that Disney Plus will give you different ways in which you can view the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And when I say different ways, what I mean is you can either sort of view them by like, here's the Iron Man movies, or here's the Captain Captain America movies, or something you might naturally think of, oh, this is the order when these movies were released. But they went kind of a step above and beyond, where they said, well, you can actually see it based on the different phases that we had, right? Phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 of the cinematic universe, which we've talked about on this show. And phase 4 is kind of like in weirdo place because of the pandemic. But they also have cinematic universe in timeline order. So looking here at this screenshot, Captain America, Captain Marvel, then Iron Man and Iron Man 2. And then I'm kind of unsure what they do with movies that sort of split between the two. Maybe they choose the earliest point in time, but it's kind of a cool thing you can do that you wouldn't normally see for franchises.
Yeah, it's interesting because they went from, I guess originally they were sort of continuing the underlying narrative of the Infinity Stones and the building towards the culmination in the last few Avengers movies, from Iron Man, the first movie 11 years ago, to carrying it forward. And now what they're saying is there's enough of these movies that you can actually view them in the timeline continuity. So you could start with Captain America in the 1940s, move forward to get these different things in the order in which they happened in that world. Interesting approach. I'm not sure that it enhances the experience greatly.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. What do they call that thing where you can watch Star Wars in a different order and you skip one, I think it is?
That's where I was going to go, where like...
Machete?
They should do this, they should do the same thing of like, okay, you can watch them in numerical orders, episode 1 through 9, or watch them in, release date order, original trilogy, prequel trilogy, sequel trilogy, and you're mentioning the Machete order, but I'm unclear if that's been updated to include the sequel trilogy.
Oh, true, yeah.
I think if anybody had the interest to do that for the Machete, they would probably not watch those last 3 movies.
Well, I don't know. So I mean, looking at these are 3 different choices in the graphic they got here in the post, right? I don't know. I don't know if I would want to watch, Captain America, then Captain Marvel, and then Iron Man in that order, because I think Iron Man was the first movie, right, of this
it was
franchise, and there's a lot of sort of tie-ins, like when Robert Downey's father shows up in one of the other movies. Like, he's in the movie, but then in Captain Marvel they go back and they meet him again or something like that, or no, maybe it's in the Avengers last ones, the last 2 stone ones or whatever, Infinity Stone and Gauntlet of Doom or something.
How quickly they forget, Jaime.
Yeah. But because you know what I mean, like, and then Captain Marvel kind of came out. Captain Marvel didn't go back to Robert Downey's dad's place. That was I'm getting all them mixed up, but
yeah, that was Winter Soldier, I think, was the one.
But all the more reason not to
Civil War.
Around.
Civil War.
Yeah, all the reason not to bounce around, because there's continuity between them, is what I'm saying.
Well,
right?
The Captain Marvel one, I find that they're doing it in that order is a little confusing, because a lot of the subtle jokes in Captain Marvel rely on your understanding of Nick Fury. And if you've just watched only Captain America, I assume somebody would do this if they'd already seen the entire franchise. It doesn't seem like something you'd do if you'd never watched any of them. But all the jokes in Captain Marvel are about the fact that he's going to lose an eye, right?
Right.
And if you have only seen Captain America, the First Avenger, he's in that movie in the PS scene when Captain America wakes up after years and years in the ice, right? But that wouldn't be really enough to understand who he is and, much about him, right?
That's what I mean, because you see him in the outro. What do you call it? The
PS, yeah.
The post whatever
post credits,
post credits. You see him in Iron Man at the very end, right? And that's when the first time you meet Nick Fury in the cinematic universe, right? So I don't know if I would do it that way. Weird. And then this phase 3 where you've got Civil War, then Doctor Strange, and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Am I reading this right? Oh, that's phase 3. I see. Okay, there must be a phase 1 that's not in the graphic here, right?
Yeah, it's just showing a little slice. And you're right. I think you probably should watch them in release order. It's probably like, if you're new to the series of movies, that's probably going to be the most helpful. I think this timeline one is for the fans who really want to see it that way. And actually, if there are any Disney engineers listening, you can go even further. I want all of these different scenes sliced up into timeline segments.
Yeah.
So the part you talked about, Nick Fury shows up here and Captain America, guess what? Doesn't show up until well after Captain Marvel because it's much later in the timeline than the 90s when that scene happened. Like, I want each individual bit of movie as like one continuous multi-hour, multi-day movie.
So we would start with Captain America and Iron Man going back to the like 40s and getting the stuff from his dad.
I think it goes even further. Doesn't Thor: The Dark World show like, oh, the Dark Elves did this thing back in 10,000 BC? So yep, that scene shows up first.
Yeah, I think they did that. It's called The Lord of the Rings, didn't they?
Yeah.
But yeah, that would be really weird because then you'd be like, what is going on? Like, who are these guys who've, like, because I mean, if you think about it, if you were back in the 40s and Iron Man and Captain America showed up and like totally, invented a transparent aluminum and stole your whales, you'd be like, what just happened? And then you wouldn't know, you'd never know what happened. Really.
If you thought that was weird, without getting too far into spoilers, think about what Endgame ends up doing and trying to slice up those scenes and stick them into the timeline.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't know.
Now, how much would you pay? $7.99 a month, right?
And they switched up. The other thing I heard about this change that they've done to the Marvel movies is they've relegated the non MCU movies into their own little bucket, right? They're calling them legacy films as part of the rearrangement on Disney Plus. The movies like X-Men and the sort of out of canon stories, they're labeling them a little differently according to a story I saw this week. They said that they're calling them Marvel legacy films, as in these are from the past. They have nothing to do with the universe that we're creating, all the new TV shows. They're not intertwined with our stuff. They're a legacy of the past.
Interesting.
So they're sort of it's their way of saying we own the rights to these, but we kind of disavow them.
Right.
We'll get ready. We'll show you the X-Men and Fantastic Four when we're good and ready.
Right. Okay, cool. What's happening in New York or not happening in New York?
Well, what happened for New York Comic-Con is there's a trailer that came out for a very rare CBS All Access limited series. I'm very excited for
this. Which will be free in Canada. Yeah.
So I'm not super familiar, if I'm being forthcoming, with Stephen King's The Stand, but I'm at least familiar with its existence and this idea of the Darkman. But nevertheless, there's going to be a miniseries coming to CBS All Access, and this is the first trailer for it, starring James Marsden, who's, depending on what we were just talking about, you either know him as Cyclops from X-Men, or you know him as, I 100% forgot his character name in Westworld.
Right. Yeah. The guy.
Oh, that guy.
He's definitely a guy who's like, oh yeah, I've seen that guy.
Yeah, isn't he because for a while there I thought he was the same guy as the Ed Harris character. Like,
no, that's a different character.
Yeah, no, because for a while there I thought he was the gunslinger dude, right?
Yeah, it's Teddy. Teddy is the character.
Teddy. Yes.
Oh, thank you. Yes, thank you.
And James Marsden is the actor.
Yeah, we talked about that. I don't know if I ever went back and finished the third season of Westworld. It got really weird.
It was very weird, but it was interesting.
Yeah, maybe I'll go finish it.
Yeah. Either one of you familiar with The Stand, the basis for this series?
I am. Yeah. It's it'll be interesting. There's been a couple of cracks at trying to tell The Stand as. It was a mini series on TV. 25 years ago, like a long time ago. It'll be interesting to see how this works as a series. How they modernize it. It's not something, it's funny because they're doing a remake, and of course there's been this whole wave of Stephen King revival films and remakes and stuff like that. It'll be interesting because it's not a movie that depends a whole lot on special effects, or like some of these movies, when you remake them from 1980 to 2020, 40 years later, the technology allows you to do really cool things that you could never have done without the benefit of computer technology. The Stand, there's some stuff towards the end that gets a little sort of epic and that'll probably translate better, but a lot of it is it's a people story. It's an interesting story about the people and their relationships as they go through. I mean, it's a monstrous book. I don't know if you guys have ever, I don't know if you've read it, but it's an interesting character study. It's extremely apt. Of course, it's set during a pandemic, right? So it'll be interesting to see what people's reactions to it are, because and I don't know how it was filmed. The beginning of the book, and not a small amount, like hundreds of pages at the beginning of the book, are about how this pandemic starts, spreads, and kills millions of people. Which
it never happened.
Maybe not good timing.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe not. All right, or maybe it's a reality show. Okay, what's next?
Well, this one I thought was kind of interesting, given that I'm a fan of Netflix's Castlevania animated series. And if you like that art style, they've got a new series coming out called Blood of Zeus, coming out on October 27th. Another series, this time talking about the brewing war between the gods of Olympus and the Titans. And a commoner named Heron discovers their secret past, and Greek mythology stuff breaks out and happens. But it looks.
Right. Is there a Kraken?
I sure hope so, because that'd be pretty good timing. But I don't know. I see characters like, oh yeah, that's this is Greek, right? This is very clearly Ares, Zeus, and others. So it looks cool. I'm a big fan of what they did with the Castlevania series, the art style, and everything. So I'm excited to see this coming out later this month.
Is that the stop motion?
No, it's a Japanese anime style of 2D cell animation.
Okay, right. I'm thinking maybe of Frankenweenie or something like that. All right, cool.
So next up, I've got some casting news. We got a bit of information this week on the Mad Max prequel movie that's going to be done. So they're doing a prequel to Fury Road that is set around Furiosa, which is the character played by Charlize Theron in the movie. They're now doing the sequel, and Anna Taylor-Joy is going to play Furiosa as a younger version of that character. And also starring in this are Yahya Abdul-Mateen II. He was in the Watchmen miniseries that was on HBO last year, and he was fantastic in that. And Chris Hemsworth, our very own Thor, is also going to be co-starring in that. Interesting that that's the direction that they're going next with this, that they're going with the prequel, and that they've gotten as far as casting.
Which is weird. I thought the Road Warrior was the prequel to Mad Max.
Well, this is the prequel to centered around Furiosa, not centered around Max, right?
Right.
Because she was really like the breakout character from that. As much as I think Tom Hardy was good in that, Charlize Theron was amazing in that movie.
Yeah, no,
I honestly think it is a travesty she didn't get nominated for an Oscar for that performance. She was amazing. And yeah, so they're doing this, and it's co-written and directed by George Miller, the creator of the franchise. It'll be interesting to see. It's apparently now, according to Warner Brothers, according to reports, this is from IO9, they said that the film is in advanced development, and it is getting moved into a priority position by the studio, which is Warner Brothers. So yeah, we're going to get another Mad Max movie sooner than later. Who knows which streaming service it'll end up on, and Tim and I can watch for free.
Yeah, exactly. While we wait for our
given the discussion of prequel to what, I think this might be an interquel similar to Rogue One that takes place in between, if I'm understanding. So I am assuming, and I'm less familiar with the Mad Max timeline, I'm assuming that the Mad Max movies with Mel Gibson are first in the timeline, then Fury Road. So presumably this prequel to Fury Road is after the other Mad Max movies, but that may not be true, and I may have it wrong. So I think this needs to come to Disney Plus so I can watch them in release order or timeline
free, right?
order, for the fans.
So you said George Miller created the franchise. Is this like he created Road Warrior as well?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Nobody else has worked on this except for him.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, he's I believe he's in the 70s. Like he's an older person.
Yeah, he's got to be. Yeah, because that's
Road Warrior was what, late 70s, early 80s?
80s, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a while that he's been working on this, and again,
that was before Mel Gibson was even a thing, right? So
yeah, well, that was one of his sort of breakout things, right? He sort of became a cult actor after that, and then that started giving him more big roles, and then from there he went on to become a very famous actor.
Yep. All right, and so finally we have
so if you are a fan of Monster Hunter video game series or Mila Jovovich, I've got a movie for you. So Monster Hunter, which is hypothetically coming to theaters in December. We'll see about that.
I love that we have to put those caveats in now.
I have no faith. This is almost certainly going to be a headline coming up in the next few episodes as like follow-up fact check sort of thing. So Paul W.
Stay
Anderson,
tuned, folks. Yeah,
who's done other video game adaptation direction for the Resident Evil movie series and Mortal Kombat movies is taking that same kind of formula. I am not personally that familiar with the series, other than the concept of like these giant monsters. You can call them dinosaurs, you can call them kaiju. The basic premise of the game, as I understand it, is you have to go around and kill the monsters, harvest their parts of like, hey, this one's got horns, great, let's use those horns to go stab this other one, right? Like, it's got that sort of mechanic. I have seen some reactions online. People are like, all right, it's got an opportunity. Like, it feels like it's pretty faithful to the games, but not a lot of hope that the story will be that great. But you know what? I think this is very similar to Pacific Rim, the story that I keep bringing up of like, sometimes you just need good popcorn movies, and I think this might be one. Granted, probably your own popcorn sitting on your couch.
Right. Interesting. Cool. All right. Well, that's it, kids. We're at the part of the show where we talk about the latest Star Trek something or other. This week is the first episode of season 3 of Star Trek Discovery. That hope that is you, not that hope that binds you. Sorry, that hope that is you, part 1. So this week, Jonathan's going to lead off, and we're just going to banter along. So, and actually, at the timing that this show's coming out, I don't know that I'll ever have time to do a recap. Anyway, off you go, John.
Well, that's okay. Jaime and I can do double duty. It'll be a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
So the episode begins with a bit of a strange scene. We see this weird digital bird clock that is sitting on a bedside table. It looks like a real bird, but it's got a digital
It's the new Amazon Echo
built into it. Yeah, very, very unusual. And we see a person getting up and sort of doing their daily routine. The bird clock goes off, they get up. As they walk away, the bed basically melts away into the floor. They go into the presumably bathroom, looks in the mirror. Their teeth are brushed for them by some sort of fancy technology that I would be very interested in acquiring. And then this person goes and sits down and starts doing a search for signals. And then we sort of see a bit of a repeat, and then we get the impression that this is sort of what this person does every single day, that this is their routine.
Mm-hmm.
From there, we're sort of thrust very quickly into a bit of chaos, because we see two ships racing through wreckage, which is clearly of former Starfleet vessels, because we see some of the NCCs on the stuff as they go by. We see one ship pursuing the other one through there. Laser bolts are firing, phaser bolts are firing, and we get our first look at David Ajala as Book. And he's being pursued by this grouchy alien named Cosmo, and he's blasting him and he's threatening him. He's saying, give back the thing, give back the thing. So, we sort of trying to figure out what's going on with these two. And as they're going through this, sort of weaving their way through this field of debris, all of a sudden this portal opens. And of course, because this is where we left off at the end of season 2, we know exactly what this portal is. The portal bursts open, and Michael Burnham comes flying through wearing her exosuit, wearing her Red Angel suit, and she collides headlong with Book's ship, knocking them both off course and sending them both careening down towards the planet. And Burnham...
I have a question. Did you see was there not a recap before you...
There was.
In the version you saw? Okay, just curious.
Yes. And so we see Burnham, we focus on her. She's inside the suit, and the suit is not responding. She's trying desperately to get it to do something, because she's now headed at a very high velocity towards this planet that is adjacent to this debris field. She's trying to get it to start. She's giving it orders. She's trying to get the thrusters to activate, and she tells it to reboot. And of course, as we'd expect no less, it finally does its reboot right before...
Well, first of all, it says, hang on, Windows needs to install some stuff.
I know, there was a lot of Windows jokes that popped into mind right there. She managed to get it to reboot. You hear the music come on, the Mac chime comes on, and she manages to get it to protect her right before she hits the ground, and of course she right into the surface of this planet. And she gets out of the suit, and she is trying to sort of look around. She's trying to figure out where she is. She's a little sort of, obviously overwhelmed. It was a pretty harrowing experience to have survived. She's trying to figure out, where she is. She tries to reach out to the Discovery. She tries to hail them, nothing. And then, of course, she has to send the suit back. So she basically says, set your auto course, go back, and it goes flying through the sky. So then she is basically standing there stranded, except for a survival kit, which has what looks to be a tricorder, a phaser, a comm badge, and I think she says that it's got food and water in there.
So did she have to, I've forgotten the timeline, did she have to send it back to be able to be discovered by herself in the past? Is that the deal?
Yeah, I was trying to remember. I didn't have time. I had hoped to go back and watch some of the key points from season 2 before we dove back in, but I did not have time. But I do recall...
Because doesn't her mother come to her with the suit on or something?
That's the thing. Or... I think she has to send it back so that it can get back to her mom, not to her.
Right. Yeah, because she sends it back to a specific point in time.
Yes.
I thought she was sending it to be destroyed, but no, I guess she was just trying to get it back before the hole closed.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
Yeah, because she sends it to her mother when the mother is being attacked by the Klingons, right? In the very beginning, like when she was a little kid, the Klingons kill her parents, right? But
they kill her dad.
But her mother escapes in the suit.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Sorry, Jaime, did you have something?
Yeah, I can't speak to the other parts that you guys are talking about because those could very well be true. I couldn't remember, and the recap didn't explain. But the thing I do remember was that she told Spock, "You'll know I'm fine." This is at the end of season 2. "You'll know I'm fine because I'm going to send the final signal once I get through the wormhole with the Discovery."
Right.
So that's what she was trying to do before the wormhole. I don't know if the other things you guys are talking about that might play into it as well, but she was at least certainly sending the signal to Spock that everything was okay.
Well, because he saw the red angel throughout the whole season 2, right?
Yeah, and he does see the final signal from Burnham at the very tail end of season 2, so he knows that she's fine.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is showing the other half of it of what was going on for her.
Yeah, and again, it's closing the loop on the whole storyline from season 2. This is sort of the end of the sort of time paradox. All the timey-wimey stuff is sort of ended to the point where she's basically had to give up the suit, so there's no going back for her at this point.
Then conveniently they abolished time travel after the temporal wars.
Well, we'll get to that one. Right. So she asks the computer, and the computer tells her she's reached the year 3188. So she's gone 900 years into the future. So we leave Burnham. Burnham is, sort of hysterically reacting. She's sort of crying, that she's made it. And then, of course, she looks over on the horizon and she sees smoke rising, and she realizes that must be what she slammed into. So she starts walking. We then cut to Burnham sort of walking towards this vessel she's collided with, and as she starts to go in for having a look at it, all of a sudden she senses something's wrong, turns around, and Book attacks her, starts coming after her. The two of them sort of go off. She says, "Listen, I'm not trying to fight you," and he's like, "You're not taking my stuff," and so the two of them have this little fight. She kind of kicks the garbanzos out of him at one point there, and and then they end up in a stalemate where he's got a knife to her throat, she's got a phaser to his head, and he sort of jokes, "What are you going to do, hurt me with that antique?" So the two of them sort of agree, okay, you know what, let's both put away our weapons. He says, whatever, if you're not here to hurt me, I'm out of here. He goes to take off. She's like, "No, but my name is Michael." He says, "I don't want to hear your name. I'm not interested in your story. I don't care. I've got my own thing to do here. And now I'm stuck here thanks to you." So it's at that point where he recognizes that the temporal vortex closes, right? And he says, "Oh, you must have had something to do with that."
Yeah, because the wormhole, the nearest wormhole is 600 light years
nearest natural away. Wormhole is that far away, and he says, so that means you must have created this one, and I don't know how you did that, especially considering this has all been banned, because the Gorn destroyed two square light years of space. Mm-hmm. Man, the Gorn have got a rough ride in this,
Yeah, they're not so smart.
Yeah. He tells her that they're on the planet Hema, and he says, "Well, thanks to you, my ship has crashed. I have a mission to carry out. I don't have any dilithium, and I have to go get it. So we need to go to the Mercantile, and that's where we're going to find this dilithium." So the two of them sort of make peace, and
she offers to trade her antique tricorder.
Well, that's it. Yeah, she basically says, "I can help you get that stuff. Let's work together. And I need to trust somebody. I need help." So he lets her onto the ship, and there she meets his very large cat, Grudge, who is a Maine Coon cat. And I would just like to point out that if you go onto Instagram right now, @GrudgeCat has his own Instagram account.
Of course, yeah.
Yep. Filled with pictures of Grudge. And so, yeah, he goes on board the cloaked ship, and she sort of says, "Oh, he starts talking about his mission," and she says, "Oh, so you're a thief," and he says, "No, I'm a courier." and I've got to get my courier, I've got to get my stuff to where it's got to go. So the two of them decide, okay, fine, we're going to go to see this mercantile, we're going to go wherever this is. And so as the two of them start walking along, he sort of looks at her and he says, I see you're, a person of faith. And he looks at that, looks at the badge on her chest, and she says, what are you talking about? And he says, oh, that's a sign of a true believer. And so it's at this point that she finds out that the Federation is gone, and she's, floored that, something that's that large and that sprawling could be gone in this era. And he explains to her about the burn. And we had talked about that because we had sort of gotten a taste in the teasers of what is the burn? What is the burn going to mean? What does that mean? And he says, well, it happened 120 years ago, long before I was born. And he says the dilithium, all the dilithium went boom. And a lot of ships and a lot of people were killed. So right. Not crystal clear exactly what happened, and maybe we'll get a little flashback or we'll get more information down the road, but it sounds like basically that was...
must have been the Gorn.
It sounds like it was a pretty epic ending to the Federation and Starfleet. Right. So we cut to the two of them as they sort of crest this rise, and they see... Maybe
somebody threw a mine down the thermal thrust port. Exhaust port.
They arrive at a mercantile. It turns out it's basically a big sprawling futuristic city, and they go into this one sort of main facility in the center of town, which seems like it's kind of like a government facility, but it's also kind of like, looks like a bit of a business hub, kind of a swap meet. It's hard to tell exactly what's happening there. A little Spartan in its population. It didn't seem like there was a lot of people there. And she is surprised to find when she gets there that the Andorians and the Orions are working together. They seem to be allies. Of course, the Orions are... in her era, very much pirates and ne'er-do-wells, whereas the Andorians, of course, are founding members of the Federation. She tries to go through this sort of security checkpoint, and the Andorian and the Orion sort of standing there, the Andorians won't let her in because she doesn't have any kind of ID. And Book sort of opens up the kit that she's got with her that shows all the antiques, quote unquote antiques, which of course are brand new for her, and says, hey, these are prime goods I'm trying to get in here. If you want to have to explain to your bosses, who I know are watching, that you wouldn't let us in here, then, that's on you. And this sort of snotty Andorian sort of says, well, I'm not letting you in. All of a sudden you hear this sort of disembodied loud voice say, let them in. And of course they get to walk through the checkpoint. They sort of get past that point, and Burnham is sort of starting to relax a little bit. She's looking around. She sees that people have these sort of personal transporter devices, so they don't have to be beamed out. They can just basically click a button and off they go. And she's pretty wowed by that. And as soon as, of course, she lets her guards down, boom, she's trapped in a stasis beam. And of course, Book ratted her out, and she ends up being taken away and to be interrogated by this large Andorian and large Orion, who are trying to figure out who she is and what she's there for, what's going on, how she came by this stuff, and so they administer this sort of truth serum, what we call it, truth powder. They spray in her face. Which leads to a very funny performance by Sonequa Martin Green, where she's sort of, manic. She's kind of laughing. She's sort of being silly. She's telling the truth, but only parts of the truth. And, it's a pretty funny scene overall.
But interesting camera work, because the camera stays focused on her face while she's moving it around, and like the camera moves with her face moving, which is kind of a really weird, interesting visual effect.
Yeah, right? It was actually, you're right, it's a very well done scene. And so we sort of cut back and forth between her, who's, she's trying to explain, that guy is the one who you're looking for, not me, that guy. And they're saying, what guy, what? And he says, yeah, he had something and he was trying to keep it cool. I think he's transporting ice cream. And of course, Book is running around. He's trying to offload her, kit, including all her goods, because he needs to get the dilithium so he can get back on a ship and get his mission finished. And as he's doing that, Cosmo finds him. Cosmo, the guy who was trying to get him at the beginning of the episode. So Cosmo ends up, sort of slapping him around a little bit. And just when it looks like things are going to get even worse for Book, Burnham shows up with our Burly Orion and Burly Andorian, who are sort of saying, this guy, okay, we got to get this guy. He's got the stuff, all right. And the two of them sort of realize that they're both in deep hot water at this point. And so in spite of her, sort of dazed and drugged condition, the two of them basically wink at each other and they know that it's on. They basically start this fight. They steal some of these rather nasty disruptors that they get from the Andorians and Orions, and they're having this shootout across the Mercantile, and it's they're blasting things. One of the Andorians tries to get the jump on Book snaps the guy's neck and then steals this very small little device off of him, but then he steps around the corner and sort of launches this device, and it turns out to be basically this giant I don't know, it's like a
wave thing,
it's like a wave of stun, right? And it basically sends everybody that's shooting at them flying across the room. And as they're
meanwhile, Michael Burnham is still high as a kite.
She is.
Right.
But not high enough that she doesn't recognize an opportunity, because she goes and she looks across the way and she now knows that dilithium is the coin of the land, right? She knows that is what they need more than anything else. So she bolts across the way as this firefight is going on, and she starts stuffing every piece of crystal dilithium that she can get into her bag so that she knows that that's going to get her where she needs to go. And because she's got the dilithium, Book says, all right, fine, I'll take you with me. So then he activates another one of those personal transporters, and she says, you had the personal transporter all along. Why the hell did you wait? So they end up transporting to this beautiful, idyllic waterfall on this alien planet, and she is, she gives him a good smack across the face, maybe breaks his nose, even though, again, she's still, feeling pretty high, although he does mention that the adrenaline in her system will start to wear away the effects of the drug. They're at the waterfall for just a second. They get a couple of lines of dialogue out, and boom, all of a sudden, more Andorians, Orions, and what was Morn? Jaime? What was Morn's race?
Oh, wow.
Because there's one of those there, too.
Yeah, Mornian, we're going to call him. So I'll look it up.
Yeah, so again, we sort of get this little weird alliance of Federation races, all sort of, chasing after them. And they end up in this sort of, they transport, people chase them, there's a firefight, they transport again, and then all of a sudden, boom, they're out of power. So they need 30 seconds for their transporter to charge again. They're getting chased, they're hiding out, they're getting blasted at. Burnham gets shot. She takes a blast off the shoulder, and it's starting to look bad for them. And then Book basically says, "You're not going to like this, but I've got something." And he grabs her by the wrist and throws the two of them off the top of a very tall cliff, and then activates the transporter, which then transports them right into a body of water. At which point he basically explains they can't track us once we've gone underwater.
So some real-time follow-up here.
Yeah.
Did we talk about the fact that Book is a courier?
Yes.
Okay, because Morn is a Lurian courier.
Oh, there you go.
Right.
It's all coming together.
Which makes sense why he's hanging out at Deep Space Nine, right?
Although he's the joke with Morn is that he's Norm. He's Norm from Cheers, right? He's just always at the bar and and never says anything. So now we've got Burnham and Book. They're soaking wet. They pull themselves out of the water. She hits him again, and she starts a conversation with them. The two of them are talking. She says, "It's been a long time since I've been shot." She looks down. Her shoulder's got a nice nick across it. She looks like she got it grazed. And Book shows us that he has some abilities. He conjures these plants from under the water by chanting and making his forehead glow, which I guess is something that the people of his species can do. And the plant is apparently the perfect disinfectant that is going to be good for Burnham to help her shoulder to heal. So he squeezes this stuff off into her hand, and she slaps it on her shoulder, and of course it burns, but it's going to keep that from getting infected. So that's the plus. So the two of them having survived this ordeal,
then she says, "We better wrap it with something."
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yes, I don't want to skip over that scene because it was memorable. Yeah, she says, I better wrap it with something, and he pulls a handkerchief out and goes to wind it up so that she can use it as a tourniquet. And he says, "You carry a handkerchief?" He says, "Well, a guy's got to blow his nose." And then she proceeds to use that handkerchief to wrap around her infected arm, possibly not yet infected arm. At which point I think all three of us went, ew.
Yep.
So the book realizes that, this, that Michael is somebody who is, a worthy ally, and he decides to cut her a break, and he's got this little device with him that can open up subspace channels, and he opens it up for her so that she can try and contact Discovery. So she opens it up, she tries this thing out, she's a little ticked off that he had this thing in his pocket the whole time, but there's no response from Disco. Nothing's out there. And so she's a little defeated. And it's at this point where he sort of says, you must be a time traveler. But I don't know how that's possible, because all the time travel technology is gone after the Temporal Wars, which is an interesting one. The Temporal Wars, weren't they referenced in Enterprise?
The Temporal Cold War, for sure.
Yeah, there was that guy who was like the time traveler dude, the cop or whatever.
Daniel, I think.
Yeah.
Was the name that he gave.
Yeah, I don't know if that's interconnected or if that's something completely separate, but I thought that was an interesting, the way they phrased it made that immediately pop into my mind, so I don't know if that was something that will pay off further down the road or where we're going to leave this. So the two of them are, sort of good, and they're feeling a little bit better, and they head back to their, to Book's ship. She says, I need some help. She's fine. Okay, they're going to go back to the ship. Get back to the ship, and of course, that's where Cosmo and the Andorian and Orion, probably about 6 or 7 of them, show up. They've got their blasters pointed at them, and they're caught. And they're like, okay, now we're really in trouble. So Cosmo is talking smack, and he's being all, snotty, haha, Book, I got the best of you. And of course, the Orion turns around and just vaporizes him, turns him into ash.
Yeah, he says, what kind of courier has his stuff stolen?
Yeah. So the Andorians and the Orions basically say, let us into your ship. We want the thing. We want the MacGuffin. And he says the password is sticky. And he said, what kind of password is sticky? He said, it's my ship. It's my password. You get your own ship. You can have your own password. So they open, the cloaking shield comes down. The door opens up into this storage chamber, and we see a something, and we're not sure what it is we're looking at. And then they fire a blast in behind the something, and it starts to move, and you realize, oh, okay, it's some sort of creature.
Well, he says, the one guy says, I didn't think it was that big, and the other one of the Andorians says, it's supposed to be served fresh.
That's right. That's absolutely,
yeah.
And then Book sort of leans over as it starts to stir and whispers to Burnham, close your eyes. And this beast slithers its way out, and it's this gigantic worm, and it starts basically glowing in certain parts of its body, start glowing blue, at which point all of the pursuers that have been chasing them, all their eyes start glowing blue, and it seems to have put them into a trance. At which point it starts eating them, and it eats the one big Andorian, or eats the one big Orion, and then it eats another one of them. And at that point, the rest of them are like, yeah, we're not sticking around here. We're out of here. So they transport out, at which point it's just Burnham and Book and this monster, and the monster sort of turns and starts making all kinds of noise, and it's coming towards Burnham, and it eats Burnham. And you're like, oh, all right, didn't see that coming. And Book doesn't panic. He just sort of looks and he says, shh, no, that's not what we're doing. Come on, spit her out, and starts like calming her down. And all of a sudden, poof, it spits Burnham across, like what, 15 feet, 20 feet? Sends her flying out into the beach. And you expect her to be just, disgusted and repulsed, but she's kind of amused. She's like, well, that's not what I expected to have happen today. And it turns out that this is Molly the Transworm, that she is this huge species, endangered species that Book has been transporting. And he sort of gets into his backstory a little bit from there. He talks about how he grew up in this family full of poachers, but he has this ability to communicate with natural things that is sort of a gift, and he doesn't belong with them, and he was sort of ostracized by the family, but he's found this life in protecting these endangered species. He also reveals his full name is Cleveland Booker. And so the two of them are on the ship. They're on his ship, and they're headed to where they need to go. Obviously, he's gotten some of the dilithium from Burnham at this point, and they arrive at Sanctuary 4, where they reunite Molly with her people, and we see this beautiful, idyllic forest with this beautiful body of water and all these worms splashing around. And he says, well, we've arrived just in time for mating season, which is, I'm glad we didn't get any more explosions on that. So from there, Book says, well, I know you're not having any luck finding your people. I have an idea where we can have a look. There's this old space station, this old Starfleet base that we might be able to find people who can help you. And so they go to this place, and there we are reunited with the person we saw in the opening scene. And it turns out his name is Adira Sahil, and he says he is the liaison for the Federation. And he's amazed to see Burnham. Burnham's amazed to see him. And she says, I need you to scan and see if you can find this signal. And so he says, okay, no problem. He scans this thing. Nope. Disco can't be found in the nearby 2 sectors. She says, okay, we'll use long-range scanners. And he says, no, there are no more long-range scanners. They all failed decades ago.
He does say there are 2 Starfleet ships in the area.
He does say there are 2 Starfleet ships in there. And then we get the backstory. We get a little bit of an understanding of why Sahil has been waiting. And in that routine that we saw at the beginning of the episode, he's been doing this apparently for a long, long time. He says his grandfather and his father were Starfleet, and that he was basically, keeping up their duties on the hope that the right person would come along and that would help trigger the revival of Starfleet, the Federation, and everything else. And of course, Book quips, a true believer. We have a very sort of sweet and maybe a little sappy scene where he opens up this family keepsake box that we saw just at the beginning of the episode, and inside is a flag of the Federation. And he says, I'm not allowed to raise it. I've wanted to put it up for years, but it can only be raised by a commissioned officer. And so she says, I'll raise the flag, but, I need you. So I'd like to make you the acting comms chief. And so they raise this Federation flag and they put it up on the wall, but it's not the Federation flag that we're used to seeing. This Federation flag has 6 stars, including 2 large stars. The original one, the one that we're used to seeing, has about 150 stars or more, and it has 3 big stars representing Earth, Vulcan, and Andoria. So clearly there's been a really dramatic change in what we're familiar with.
Didn't they blow up Vulcan in one of the stories?
Well,
the Kelvin universe.
I was going to say, I don't think we're in that timeline, so I don't think it applies.
That's true.
So that's basically where we end up, is this sort of look at this flag and this sort of moment of hope for maybe this is the spark that will rekindle the Federation.
Yeah, and it's sort of the looking at the flag reminded me of that trope that we saw in the last episode of Lower Decks and the first Star Trek movie, where everybody's looking at this flag and you're having everybody gets a little woody and they're all the music's all swelling and we're all supposed to feel patriotic and Starfleety and it's kind of like it's over the top drama. It's just a freaking flag,
But flags are symbols of purpose, right? That's...
Well, but I mean, I don't mean to diss the flag. I mean to diss the way that in Star Trek, Star Trek kind of presentations, they do these over the top, like the flyby and the 2-minute flyby in the Lower Decks, and they did the 2-minute flyby at least, and maybe it was more than 2 minutes in the first movie, right?
It was like 5 or 6 minutes. It went on forever.
Yeah, and oh my God, we haven't seen the Star Trek. Well, mind you, at that point in time, we hadn't seen it in 4 or 5 years.
Well, right? And we'd never seen it like that. Not ever. It had never been shown to us as a real 3-dimensional thing like that.
And that was that motion controlled camera thing around a big giant model, and we'd only ever seen it, whipping by in the original series, right?
Yeah.
So.
No, that's one of those scenes that in the moment you were like, okay, it's too long. Yeah. It's only in retrospect you're like, man, that is way too long.
Yeah.
And the one thing I wanted to add is, I know we had talked about this, I think, when some of the trailers had dropped about this season, and I think I might have been guilty of this. I don't know if we all were, but we were saying, this explains the Calypso episode from season 1 of Short Treks, which was a couple years ago, where we see the
Is it the same guy?
The Discovery. It is not the same guy. So that's I didn't think that's where I was going with it. Is when we saw the trailer and there was, we're in the future and it was a black man with a beard, I didn't really have a strong memory. I think I only maybe watched Calypso once 2 years ago, and it didn't, I guess, make that deep an impression, because when we started talking about, there's this new character, I think we immediately thought, it's probably that character from the Calypso episode where they find the Discovery sort of abandoned in the far future. So I looked it up, and no, that's a different character. His name was Kraft in that episode, and it was a different actor, of course. And so this is a completely different storyline. So where Calypso fits in the grand scheme of things is still unclear.
Right.
So as season openers go, what did you guys take away from this one? Do you feel like this is a good table setter, or is this, as we say, this is a part one. I assume the part two will be a little more on what's happened to the Disco crew at this point.
Yeah, so the reason why I mentioned the thing about the opener, like the recap, was I didn't remember the wormhole opening and them leaving as being that spectacularly, well shot, or like it looked really good in the thing. Because after watching 10 weeks of Lower Decks, you kind of lose the sort of the production value that goes into this show, right? And then the little opener at the beginning where they're whipping through and the guy's being shot at, that just reminded that's that Star Wars thing that they did in a couple of movies, where they open with a big battle at the very beginning, or a big chase or something like that.
Yeah, right? it did remind me a little bit of the beginning of Revenge of the Sith, right? With Obi-Wan and Anakin zipping through the debris fields, and yeah.
Right, and same thing with the one with the second one too, where he and Obi-Wan are whipping towards this ship, right? But so it was really well shot. And I gotta say, like, I just watched the captions and I went back and just to check it again, but obviously I didn't realize that that's Iceland, but my God, that place is beautiful. Like sparsely, strangely alien, but still amazingly beautiful scenes, like the green mossy part that they were walking over at one point, and then those big sort of icy lakes with the lava all around. It really made it look. I kept looking at it, going, I wonder if that's really a place on Earth that they just gone CGI crazy here. But yeah, it was really, really amazing from that point of view. I really enjoyed surprisingly, because I'm not really big in the gunfighty kind of stuff, but the scene where they're on in the mercantile and they're fighting with the disruptors and stuff like that was a really well shot sort of cinematic scene, right? For a TV show too, right? Let's be realistic, right? Notwithstanding the fact that Jaime has to pay for it, but so it looks really good. I think the interplay between Burnham and Book was fun. Like, wasn't sort of, they weren't sort of like flirting with each other as those kind of things tend to do sometimes, but they were sort of back and forthing, and she never really comes out and says, I'm like 900 years old, and which she could have done at some point, it's amazing the quality. Can you imagine getting like those antiques, and like 900-year-old antiques, and the batteries still work, and all the features still work, and
although apparently it wasn't enough to impress the prospective seller that Book is trying. She sort of says, not interested. But sort of interesting that's the sort of place where one and the whole architecture of that thing sort of floating in the space above the city was kind of a neat thing too, right? My God, these people walked a long way. Like I can't believe, like thankfully we didn't have to watch them walk for like 4 days, which is about how far it would have taken them, right? Yeah, it wasn't quite Lord of the Rings, but there was a lot of walking, and it's particularly funny because again, you do get that moment afterwards where Book says, I've had the transporter with me all the time.
Was that? I thought that was the thing he stole from the other guy.
I thought what he stole was that blaster thing that knocks them all flying.
Well, but I thought the blaster thing was also a transporter. But then she did say at one point, because he brings out the big computer screeny sort of holographic thing, and that's what she was talking about. I thought, right?
Yeah.
Because he lets her try and talk to the ship. But when she says you've had that a whole time, she was talking about the transporter. You think? I got confused. I didn't catch that.
Yeah,
I thought the transporter was the thing he stole from the Andorian.
Yeah, we'd have to go back and check that again. It's that's a second watching detail. How about you? What did you take away from this as a premiere episode?
Yeah, I thought it was a good table setter because they're going into a whole new era as far as we know, right? And granted, still questions about where does that short trek fit in the timeline. So I looked things up, and Living Witness, an episode of Star Trek Voyager, as part of its show, end up in the year 3074, so 3074, because apparently 700 some years prior, Voyager was involved with this interspecies battle, and the backup holographic doctor, EMH, at the very tail end of that, apparently had gotten his opportunity to go try to check out and see if he could retrace what was going on in Voyager. So 3074. We heard at the very beginning of this episode that is in 3188. And again, as far as we know, this is like the furthest we've seen in the Star Trek timeline. So they're doing quite a jump, I think very similar to the jump between the original series versus the Next Generation, where it's like, all right, what was that, like a 75-year jump, I think? Just roughly doing the math. So they sort of spent that first episode sort of setting the stage for, okay, here's what's different, right? Like they're not fighting the Klingons, right? Like that was a big deal, that like this old Cold War era sort of thing has changed, and we have a Klingon on the bridge, right? And in this case, I think it does a pretty good job. Like, all right, well, apparently Andorians and Orions work together, and Lurians and others, like they all, and other new things that we see, they're there, and so there's presumably going forward, we're going to see some familiar things. I'm going to guess we're going to see Klingons. I'm going to guess we're going to see, Vulcans, Romulans, that sort of things, but they won't necessarily be in the same state that we saw them before. So I think it was actually a pretty good approach here to focus just pretty much on Michael Burnham from the main cast. As far as I know, I don't think we even see anybody else from the regular cast.
No, not a single
Everybody's
person.
New characters, right? Except for Michael.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting too. I don't know, did you both get to see the sort of coming this season on Discovery thing that was on after the episode?
Yeah, they showed that here, and I'm looking forward to like action figures of Saru and his non-uniform outfit.
Yeah, it's funny because this episode, and maybe sometimes they're making these things with the prospect of watching them on a streaming service as a season or something else, but it's just very funny because this episode ends with kind of a melancholy expression for Burnham, where she sort of says, by the law of temporal mechanics, they could come out today, tomorrow, or 1,000 years from now from the wormhole. And she sort of has this sort of sad resignation of, well, I may never see the Discovery crew again. And the episode ends, within minutes of that. And then they go, coming this season on Discovery, and you immediately see the rest of the crew. They don't explicitly show them all together. They do show that time has elapsed, because in this episode, Burnham's hair is what we're used to, which is she has sort of a top bun on her hair. And in the coming this season, she has very, very long hair. So clearly time is supposed to have elapsed. Not necessarily years, but time will have elapsed. So I get the impression...
human hair grows 6 inches in a year, so...
Yeah, so I get the impression that she is meant to have spent...
Most people's hair.
More time... Yeah. Spend more time in the future than maybe the rest of the crew. So maybe they are arriving later or otherwise. But it'll be interesting to see how all that stuff plays out. But it was very funny because there was this sort of melancholy, well, who knows? Maybe they'll be out there somewhere. And they're like, by the way, they're right here. We can see them in the trailer for the rest of the season. It's not like they've disappeared or anything.
Yeah.
So exactly. I wonder if the next episode will focus entirely on the rest of the crew and not on Michael, so that we get that sort of time elapsing.
Yeah, back and forth.
Yeah, I wonder if it'll just be focused on what has happened in this sort of, coming out of the wormhole experience from their perspective.
Well, maybe they'll show up at 3394 or whatever.
Well, that's it. Maybe Burnham will have lived, 6 months, a year, 5 years of a life that they didn't get to experience with her, so when they meet her, she'll be a different person. She'll have different experiences. It could some interesting story techniques that could be thrown into there, and changing the characters around and expectations could be really interesting.
Yeah.
The other thing I wrote down in my notes is the worm was called Molly, which is kind of an interesting choice if you go down my route of saying, I don't know if that was a coincidence, because Molly is the eldest child of Chief Miles O'Brien. And we know from some indeterminate time in the future, based on what Lower Decks has shown us, that Miles O'Brien is one of the most important people in history. So it might not be unreasonable that you have children and pets and etc. named after people from that family.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I must say, the one thing that did stand out to me this first episode, I mean, Sonequa Martin Green's a fabulous actress, and she crushes it every single episode. But I was impressed with David Ajala's book. Jaime, you're a Supergirl watcher, so you must remember he was Manchester Black for a while on Supergirl the past couple of years, and he was really good on that too. Played this sort of, working both sides, kind of, gray area kind of operative inside the Supergirl Arrowverse world. And I thought he was really good there, and I was excited to see that he was the person who had been cast as this now obviously main character for this show too. I thought he was really compelling. He's a good actor too.
Right. Mm-hmm. Cool.
Well, I guess we're gonna have to watch the rest of the season.
Yeah, it's too bad. Sorry, my dog's bugging me. Go away. He thinks I'm going to let him out. All right, well, let's get to our watch list so I can let the dog out. What do you got for us, Jaime?
Mine is for Apple Music subscribers. So Disney apparently has its own little hub inside of Apple Music, and I can't for the life of me figure out how to get to this without using the little magic link, which is in the show notes here. It's apple.co/Disney Music. Like, I literally cannot figure out how to navigate in the app, but that's fine. You just bookmark this thing. It has interesting playlists like Complete Marvel Cinematic Universe, if you want to hear all the soundtracks for that, or Disney Lullaby, Disney Workout, Disney Plus, and sing-alongs and all sorts of things that you might like, Disney Pixar hit. It's really kind of cool. They've got themed ones like Disney Halloween, given it's the era, and looking right after that is Disney Holiday with Kermit and company. So I thought that was pretty neat. I'm guessing these are all songs you could have reached before, but it's kind of, you're in the mood of like, hey kids, let's do a sing-along. All right, let's just go into the sing-along channel and play that. Or all right, they kind of need to wind down, so Disney Lullaby or instrumentals to get things going.
Cool.
All right.
I got a couple things that I'm looking forward to getting into, and that's on my to-do list this weekend. So I've been during the pandemic, I've been sort of gathering up, especially now things have opened up a little bit more here in Canada. I've been going around and picking up some comic books to fill some old runs, and part of that has sort of led me down the rabbit hole of enjoying some characters that I hadn't gotten in with for a while, and has led me to some new series. So 2 new series that have started this year that are hot as heck right now, and that are ones that are now sitting here on my bedside table ready for reading. There's a new Thor series that's gotten a lot of heat under it. A very popular writer named Donny Cates has taken over, and he is he's sort of Marvel's Wonder Boy right now. He's come off. He wrote Venom for a while. It was a really huge hit. He wrote some of the space stories, some Silver Surfer. Apparently all really, really well done. I have not read very much of it, but his Thor run has been selling like hotcakes, to the point where, like, as soon as the books come off the stands, they're already worth twice what they were before, and they're hard to come by, and, really, really hot. So I thought, okay, I'll pick up whatever the latest, versions are, the 5th printing or whatever it is, and sit down and read them. So I gave them a flip through, and I was like, this looks really good. I'm going to, sort of get into it. So the first Thor arc that he's done ties in with, Thanos. Of course, everybody knows Thanos from the Avengers movies. Ties in with this huge storyline involving a huge attack on Asgard. And it looks really, really interesting. So I picked up the first, I think, 7 issues this last week, and then that's on my to-do list. And the other thing I picked up, which is, again, another series that sort of got a lot of heat under it, is this new book called Strange Academy. And Strange Academy is, the basic premise is, the elevator pitch for this one is, it's what if Doctor Strange founded Hogwarts? So the idea is that Doctor Strange basically opens a school for witchcraft and wizardry, or in this case, Master of the Mystic Arts. and he is sort of brings together his, some of his contemporaries and this group of magically powered youngsters and starts this school. So this one's actually only been going for a few months. The issue 3 just came out maybe 2 weeks ago. But again, the first couple of books are now hot as a pistol and starting to get really hard to find. They're already into, I think, a 4th or 5th printing of the first book. And I say number 3 just came out. And so that one is very much on my radar. I know some of the creators. Scotty Young is one of the creators of that, who's a very popular artist. And I think that one sort of tying those, that sort of elevator pitch worked for me. I was like, you know what, I'm going to check out the first few issues. So I've got about 10 books to read over this weekend. And I'm going to dive back into some brand new comics for the first time in a while, as opposed to sort of collecting them after the fact. I had not been reading a lot of stuff the month that it was coming out, only a few books that I read like that. And so I'm wading back into the Marvel Comics comic universe this weekend.
Cool. All right. Cool. And of course, I've got some non-sci-fi, non-comic-y kind of things. I watched Enola. I'm not sure if it's called Enola Holmes or whatever, but interesting story. I guess Enola Holmes is a series of books, obviously geared towards younger audiences, but it was a fun sort of, romp through, the sort of Sherlock Holmes, Mycroft Holmes kind of era of England. And this Enola character, played by Millie Bobby Brown, is, a not your typical woman in that time period. So that's kind of interesting. And then I'm always been fascinated by feminism, I call myself a feminist, as it were. And there's a movie on, I think it's on Netflix, or it might be Amazon Prime, called The Glorias, which stars, I forgot her name now.
Gloria Steinem?
No, well, she's in the end of it, but yeah, it's about her, and it's sort of told in. There's 4 actors who play her in various phases of her life. Actually, 3 actors who play her at various stages of her life, and one is the woman from, the Silence of the Lambs sequel. What's that
Hannibal?
Woman's name?
Julianne Moore was the actress's name for...
Julianne Moore, yeah. So Julianne Moore plays Gloria Steinem in the sort of era when we know her. Alicia Vikander plays her as a young woman, starting out in as a journalist and going to India and things like that. And there's a couple of girls who play her as a young, child, right? 2 phases of her life. And they're all sort of riding on this bus. Like, it's kind of like they kind of, even though there are different phases of her life, they kind of sort of meet up with each other in throughout her whole sort of arc. And at the very end of it, it actually is Gloria Steinem in the bus, and then she does some speeches at the end there. But good story, interesting way to tell a bio of somebody. She's obviously a permanent person who was famous for her her writings. Being did an expose on the Playboy Club and all that kind of stuff, and and of course led the ERA movement, and which I don't think ever passed, right? But
is that the Equal Rights Amendment in the United States?
Yeah, that's right.
No, that has been going on since like the 70s.
Yeah, it hasn't fully been ratified by enough states to be enacted, right?
Correct.
Yeah. It tells a sort of tragic story of her mother, who was actually a journalist as well, but published under a man's name, and then she wasn't quite well throughout her whole life, and so she was really pleased to see Gloria Steinem take on and become a full-fledged journalist, right? But it's like the typical scenes of the 60s, like where the one day she's working in the office and the guys come to her and they say, the secretary's not here, can you mind making the coffee? Meanwhile, she's working on a lead story, and she gets up from her desk and goes and makes the coffee, because that's what you had to do back then. Yeah, sort of interesting sort of dichotomy between how we don't know what the world was like back then, and this is a really interesting portrayal of it at the time, right? So yeah, it's a good movie. Glad I watched it. I think it was at the film festival as well, right? Toronto Film Festival. But yeah, so that's my picks. So I guess that's it for another week. Jaime. So people want to look for you on the interwebs. Where would they find you?
I'm on Twitter as @DevWithTheHair.
And Jonathan, people want to get in touch with you?
I'm on Twitter and Instagram as @JPK News.
Right, and I am Timitra, TIMMITRA, on Twitter and Instagram and all those other things too. And so until next week or next time, we'll see you in the future.
Bye.
Maybe.
Bye.
You've been listening to the Spotcast podcast. If you want to find out more about the podcast or see the episode show notes, visit the Spotcast website at spotcast.com. You can get in touch with us on the website or follow us on Twitter at Spockcast. If you have feedback or questions, send us a tweet with the hashtag AskSpockcast. If you like the show, please consider recommending us to a friend, writing a review on iTunes, or pledging any amount at patreon.com/Spockcast. You can find details on how to help us on our website, spockcast.com/sponsor us. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the future.
Something different at the end there, but I can't remember what it was.
Watch out for flying Burnhams.
Flying Burnhams. Oh,
Be careful out there. Burnhams could crash into you at any given moment.
Yeah. Always check your arm before you wrap it with somebody else's handkerchief.
Always check the handkerchief before you wrap it around your arm.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah. You read my mind.
Gross.
Yes, very gross. All right. Wait, you have to wake up at what time? 3? I thought it was 5 a.m. for us. Wow. Hang on, start recording.
Because of pre-order? Maybe, because then I don't get my 3, possibly 6%, and then I don't know where's the time. And then I don't know how it works with will that work with my carrier, or is it like an unlocked one, and then I have to go through the effort of switching over. Can't find out when it is.
Hang on. No, there was a pre-order. I saw an email or something about that. Pre-order. No. I think when you go to the Apple website, it tells you can pre-order, or maybe in the app, in the phone app. Pre-order
12 and 12 Pro, according to this one website, says 8 a.m. Eastern, 5 a.m. Pacific.
No, I think I was looking in the app today because I had to buy an iPad. Let's see.
Yeah, I was trying to do the trade-in or something. It's like, oh, come back and do this. I'm like, really, dude? Why do you tell me that? That should have been the first thing you asked me.
Well, yeah. Oh, this is the wrong store. Apple Store. This one. There we go. They'll probably say, we'll be back later. Let's see. Apple Store. My device. It's got all my device details in here. That's cool. I went to shop. iPhone Pro. View pricing. Pre-order from 5 a.m. on 16:10. So this is my time zone, so it's got to be that. So I went to the Apple Store app.
Right. So
what does yours say?
Wait, it says 5 a.m. Are you sure it doesn't? So
it doesn't say time zone or whatever, but it definitely I'm in Canada and it knows I'm in Canada.
Well, I mean
in
if
Toronto,
it's coded very nicely,
Toronto,
it knows you're in Canada. If it's like, hey, we just got lazy and put this label in here.
Yeah, they wouldn't do that. Come on, I mean that's underhanded.
Not underhanded. It's just lazy.
Well, okay. So here's the thing: when it used to be midnight for you guys, I had to get up at 3 a.m. So I would go to sleep and I would wake up at 3 a.m. and then I would be lying in my bed. It's the only time of the year I'm lying on my back ordering phones, right? Half asleep. Yeah, I don't know. 5 a.m. So I think 5 a.m. would be 2 a.m. for you, right?
Yeah, I do not believe it is 5 a.m. your time.
You do not believe
that goes against what I saw, and I'm trying to go through the flow right now to figure out and it's searching the interwebs.
So do me a favor. Just open your App Store app on your phone or whatever. Apple Store app, not the App Store. Apple Store app on your phone.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I'll go to the Apple website while we're talking about. Hey, John.
I'll just sit here and pick my nose. It's fine.
Yeah, you just pick your nose.
Yeah,
fine.
Yeah.
Well, we geek out here.
That's why I have 2 sons, so I can wipe boogers on them.
White boogers on them, yeah. Well, speaking of boogers, yeah, there was some boogers in the show today. That's what I was thinking. I wonder if she was thinking that too when she wrapped her arm up, right? She gave him that. Are there boogers on this look?
Yeah. And that's the first thing Zave and I said to each other. Ew.
Yeah, apple.ca. Here we go. Apple.ca. Okay, so if I go to shop, go to iPhone, I'm clicking on iPhone, clicking on the new Pro, because you can't order the other ones today, right? You can only order this one. View pricing. And what does it say? Come on, baby. you order yours from 5 a.m. on 1610.
Yeah, mine says 5 a.m. PDT on 1016.
Mine says 5 a.m. No EDT, nothing.
I don't think they're going to open it by zone, so I think yours is at the much more comfortable time of 8 a.m.
To piss us all off. They might do that to piss us all off because they've been doing this for and they're not new at this, I mean.
Yeah, I guess.
You can't order the Max until tomorrow? No, November. What? No, 06.
I thought it was the Mini that was at a different time.
November 6th. You can't order the Pro Max till, right?
Yeah. So to catch up, Jonathan. So what I'm trying to figure out is the last time I ordered an iPhone, they were still doing it at midnight on Pacific time, which is an uncomfortable 3 a.m. for you East Coasters. That's true.
Yes.
So I was like, I think I just need to stay up late today. And then I looked and said, wait a minute, no, I need to wake up stupid early tomorrow so I can be up
order
for
the Mini
5 a.m.
Oh, sorry.
Pacific.
Yeah, no, November. So November. Oh, you can't. You have to wait till November to order the Mini as well.
Yeah. So I don't know. You can check it out at 5 a.m. Tim if you'd like. I'm not going to guide you one way or the other. I'm not going to be responsible if you accidentally miss on the iPhone because it turns out that they do it by region.
Have you heard the expression dilly gas before?
No, I've heard of dilly dally.
Well, dilly gas. So I mean,
no, it's dilly gaff with an F. Dilly gaff.
Yeah, dilly gaff. Yeah, this whole. I'm trying to keep it cleaner, John. But to because John knows this because he's been around me a long time.
He's going to say for 30 years I've heard this one.
Anyway, this is what I call a dilly gas because I am not going to order a phone, and it's the dilly gas stands so it doesn't look like I give a.
I see. Yes,
or the dilly gaff has got the other F part.
I'm familiar with the acronym. I have never heard it spoken as a word. So yes, okay.
Have you seen dilly gaff before?
Yes, I have.
Really?
Okay. I've only seen it written online. I've never
been
heard
saying
it
that
spoken
since I was in high school. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So I guess if you're not going to order a phone, then Tim, whether for yourself or for the office or something, I guess it doesn't matter for you.
I'm not going to get it. Last year, what we did, because of this whole timing thing, we actually went to the Apple store and bought them on day one. So another manager and I went up and we both had corporate credit cards, and I bought 2 phones, he bought 2 phones, right? So yeah, because we couldn't get into the queue. We couldn't guarantee that if we ordered it online, because you know what's going to happen. You're going to get online, and like everybody else in the world is going to get online, and you're going to be tapping your phone to update.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because all the tricks that we've talked about on the show before I'm going to use and
refresh. Yeah, I mean, the thing about it is I'm surprised the store's not offline right now. Like we're getting it ready kind of thing. But
so the store app says that you can get your stuff ready before 9 p.m. Pacific. So it sounds like in the next hour and a half, it probably will go down as they do their thing, I would guess. But just to put a button on this, so we can go into the main show. If I'm going to wake up at 5 a.m. Pacific to order this thing, I want the first one off the line. I want it still warm in my hand, like the fresh fries that you get at McDonald's if you show up at the right when they start making them. Wait a
minute. But if I can order at 5 a.m., then you can't go to bed till 2.
That would actually be reasonable for me. I could do that. It's 5 a.m.
You might want to think about doing that because you're not getting a phone otherwise.
No, Tim, I don't know what your UI is showing, and I don't know if it's some weird localization for Canadian English problem where somebody, did replace all, added extra U's where they didn't need to be eyes where they didn't need to be.
I'm going to do you a solid. I'm going to share my screen. Hang on 1 second here. Share desktop. Share this one. Okay,
there's so many slams on our country in one sentence.
I know. This guy's dissing us, right. Here. So can you see my screen yet?
I do see it. Yes.
Okay, you see up here where it says apple.com/CA.
Right.
So that would indicate that we're looking at the Canadian website. You could look at the Canadian website too. You're totally welcome to do this too.
I guess I could try that too. But it's interesting. Yours just says 5 a.m. Let me take a look at mine.
5 a.m.
I got to Zoom goes full screen. 1 sec.
Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing. You can share your screen if you like.
Hold up. iPhone pre-order.
Are we having fun yet, John?
I am all over this shit. Yeah, it's great.
By the way, it's funny because our friend of the show, our number one More Than Just Code fan, Greg was telling me he was driving last week because he was on vacation, and he was like, "Where was the podcast?" Hi, man.
Somebody's finally noticed it. Okay, can you see my screen that says blast?
Yeah. What kind of monitor is this? Holy cow!
Oh, I'm just sharing the
app.
Yeah. So
okay, so I'm gonna say, because I don't see after the calm, I don't see anything other than, like, it doesn't have to say U.S. because we all know the U.S. is special, right?
I mean, okay. So you see, it says calm, right? 12 Pro,
5 a.m. PDT. So
why
this
does yours not have
this,
a time zone? That's wild.
I know. Well, we should go on the Friends of the Show and see what time their show, right? Because
be like, hey, Australians and UK folks, does yours have a time zone, or is it only
so
Pacific?
Wait, are they already ordering phones? That's the thing, right?
Look at this, dude. They even have PST versus PDT because we're going to change daylight saving time
right.
later.
Yeah.
So,
well, and you should be checking it. I'm sure if they're going up right now, they'll be on Google, right? Like you're on Twitter, rather. You'll see them on Twitter. People will be griping if they're having problems with this now.
Here, I'm just going to go over to the Friends of the Show channel here and post something real quick.
Yeah, I think this is weird and mysterious to me. I don't get it. I just assume
channel. Yes,
I'm going to assume that it is 5 a.m. Pacific. I can't speak for
time.
What's going on in the land of Canada. For all I know, maybe you guys only have one time zone. So
yeah,
I don't know.
We have more time.
Try to grow there.
We have more time zones than America does. What are you talking about?
That's true. You have the Atlantic one that I thought was fake. I'm like, what are you talking about? That's in the ocean.
Well, and we have Newfoundland time, which is even worse than that. It's another half an hour further along.
Yeah, and I just want to point out, I watched Discovery for free today. I don't have to pay anybody to watch it
because
it comes with our healthcare.
That's right.
Socialized sci-fi. That's true. It's true.
Order.
Well, he's looking that up. I actually don't know if Alaska and Hawaii have different time zones. I assume
Hawaii does for sure.
iPhone 12.
I don't know if Alaska's just Pacific time or if it's broken into different regions off the top of my head.
Yeah.
They've probably already ordered them all in Australia because it's already tomorrow there, right? Like,
I just assumed. You see, this is why they should just say, like, on this day and time UTC, and you figure out what day and time that is for you instead of trying to figure it out for us and then confusing us. Confusing us.
Yeah, this is just totally weird. Why would they do that?
I think it's just a mistake because everything else is pointing closer to what I think it to be. So let your conscience be your guide.
What do the leakers say? 5 a.m. PDT. Note the time zone. Yeah, because 5 a.m. PDT is 8 a.m. my time, right?
Yeah,
that sounds more
that's
reasonable
a nice,
to me.
Decent time. Then I'm like, do it 8 a.m. Pacific, which is still nice in the morning for you East Coasters.
Yeah, from my perspective, like letting us have our beauty rest and get up at like 8 a.m. in the morning to order, right, John? To, have our coffee, make up an English muffin, have a nice, take the dog for a walk, and then go to the Apple Store and order a phone at 8 a.m. That sounds totally civilized to me.
It sounds unusually civilized.
Yeah. Oh, here we go. What does Ed say? Ed says PST. PST? Yeah, PDT. Okay. Yeah, he corrected himself.
Yeah, we'll be in PST sometime in November. That makes sense for the other models.
Yeah.
But no, I get it, Tim. I was in Le Chateau Montebello, somewhere halfway-ish between Ottawa and Montreal in your grand...
Montreal.
Montreal.
What did he say
like
today? Liaison. He said liaison in the French pronunciation today on the show.
Liaison.
Did you notice that?
Glorious.
Liaison.
It's kind of challenging.
Of course, we may have already discussed this because this is in the after show we're talking now. So we're like Michael Burnham. We're talking in the after show now, but which is actually before the show. So remember when we talked about liaison and the way he pronounced it?
Yes, way back when in this episode,
like half an hour ago at least.
Yeah. Remember in the future past?
Yeah.
Need a Rendes Vaus with my liaison.
Do we have like temporal laws in our podcast world? Like, are we? Oh, people are posting screenshots now. This is great. What does this one say? Oh, these guys are West Coast. The left coast. I want to know from the Australians, right? I want the. I think we have somebody from Berlin too. These two way in. They're all sleeping though, I guess, right? The UK people.
Yeah, it's going to be at 3 a.m. for them.
Yeah, well, sorry, I just pinged the channel and their phones all went bzzz.
Hey, that is managing Slack notifications. That is a individual responsibility.
It's a skill.
Harsh.
It is an asynchronous medium, and you can decide whether you want to
Ed says they have them already. Wait, what? Wait, question mark. What? Question mark. I'm doing this for the podcast for people driving at home, transporting at home. Oh, he's just winky emoji. Okay, I missed the winky emoji. All right, let's do this podcast thing. Yeah, I just got to tell Ed a thing here. We're actually discussing this. Yeah, somebody just posted a picture here. PT? Mac Rumors. Oh, you can pre-order the iPhone 12 and iPhone Pro in every time zone, it says here on Mac Rumors. Pre-orders for the 12 and whatever kicked off Friday 16th at 5 a.m. Pacific time. But the Toronto is 8 a.m. Yeah, so leisurely coffee and whatever.
Just as you return from Timmy's, you'll be like, hey, maybe I'll get a phone now too. Since I'm already up and started my day like a normal human being.
In Sydney, it'll be 11 p.m. They have to wait till order.
Oh, boo-hoo. You got to stay 11 p.m.
tomorrow.
Late.
They're already tomorrow. I'm going to have to put my notifications on now that they're all pinging me. All right. We did the Mark thing, right?
Yep. We did.
Yeah, okay. All right. So we'll just dig into this show here. Season 3, episode 11, right?
Yeah, if we're gonna pick in this season is continuing, yep.
Yeah, we'll do the continuum thing. Unless this is season 4.
That'll get weird and complicated. And the only thing that will break this, what I'm about to say, is I think given that we do normally have a hiatus, now granted, we're going longer before the hiatus hits just because they put 2 shows back to back.
True.
I think we're okay with this still being season 3. Now, if they're like, oh, by the way, this other show is available right at the tail end of this, and then we'll have a season 3 that like never ends with 72 episodes or something.
Right. Well, so here's a little treat for the people who stick around for the after show, because I was looking at the Apple stats to sort of see that Apple actually publishes a chart which shows you how people listen to the show and where they drop off. Right. So like you'll see like it's sort of like the Cliffs of Dover. All of a sudden, when the outro, and you can actually put the slider on and listen to the show as the numbers are growing or falling, and right around the time that we start the outro, it's like the Cliffs of Dover, just dives, right? And then it comes back up. So it must mean that some people must skip through Mike. They skip through his outro, right? His verbiage, right? And they skip the theme music, and then they come back for the after show. But a lot of people don't stick around for the after show. So for those people, this is episode 72 of the Spotcast. Almost said Morton Does Code. All right. Anyway.
So I just tucked the title of the episode in there for you.
Thank you very much. That was very nice of you to do that.
Trying to
part
help.
1. What? I didn't see it continued.
It's how they're branding this. We pre-recorded the after show.
Yeah, well,
essentially did. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And now that I think about it, we did miss a headline that actually I think I saw this morning or something and just forgot to put it in the notes, that Star Trek Prodigy, the kids-oriented animated series on Nickelodeon, is going to have Kate Mulgrew.
Oh, I said that last week. We did that last week.
Okay, good. Yeah. So
he obviously doesn't listen to the
show.
No, like I obviously missed that one. Why did it show up again in Reddit? Was there some other news? Did they specify where in Janeway's life this takes place?
Yeah, they haven't said. Yeah.
Okay. Well, apologies. I was like, oh, cool. So she's reprising her role and going on. But
yeah, because I think we talked about it. We sort of said, at what point did we last see her, right? And then we realized it was at the beginning of Nemesis, right? Where she's Admiral Janeway.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
I actually watched a little bit of CTV Sci-Fi was showing Insurrection the other night, and I had not seen it, and I know we were kind of taking the piss out of it a couple episodes ago, but I hadn't seen it in many years, and I sat and I watched. It probably came in about half an hour in and watched for about half an hour, and it wasn't terrible. I don't remember enjoying it a lot at the time. I mean, Tim, your assessment has always been the right assessment, which is it's a great episode of Star Trek. Not so much a movie, but it's a great episode of Star Trek. And yeah, I sort of sat down and I watched it, and I was like, well, it certainly feels more cinematic. It's obviously better production value. It's better lit. Obviously, there's certainly big pluses to it, but yeah, it's not as awful. Maybe I should watch it from beginning to end, and I revise my view to think it's awful again. But it didn't suck.
Yeah, I was thinking of going in and watching the Star Trek movies again now that I own them all.
Well, for the low price of $20, I mean, how could you say no?
Well, I did. We decided it was 6 movies or 10 movies at the price of 6.
That's right. You paid $3.33 for 6 movies and got the other ones for free.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and you can watch them in the machete order if you want as well.
Yep.
Just watched every odd one. Oh, even one? Odd one.
No, you want to watch the evens, right? Not the odds.
The evens, yes.
You want to watch the evens. Although that means you have to watch Nemesis and agree that it's a good movie, which I'm not sure I would get on board with.
Nemesis, really?
It's not that good. I don't know. Again, maybe I need to rewatch it. It's probably been a good decade since I've sat down and rewatched the whole thing. But I remember it being pretty contrived. Mm-hmm. And again, it was not a subtle remake of Wrath of Khan.
Right.
Which was what do you call it? Nemesis, right?
Yeah, Nemesis. Because again, it's that whole like, oh, you're what I would be if I'd gone on a different path, and then I'm going to blow up the ship, and the ship's going to kill everybody, and I'll have my last revenge, and then one of them sacrifices themselves. I think it's exactly the same thing. Like it was not subtle. It was not subtle, and yeah. And it was just weird. I think, honestly, I feel my disappointment with that film is that they finished that movie and it just leaves things kind of open-ended. I guess you're supposed to say, well, Troy and Riker go off to do their own thing and Worf goes off to do his own thing, and sort of it's the dissolution of that crew and whatever. I have read many stories over the years that point to the fact that they were going to make one more that sort of was the denouement, the end of that for the Next Generation crew. But because Nemesis underperformed at the box office, and because there was the studio perceived that there was Star Trek fatigue at that point, there was too much and they wanted to sort of pull back, that they decided to go a different direction, and that's how they sort of started with the whole J.J. Abrams thing later on. But I do feel like that's not the best ending that you could have had for that. Like that as the final film franchise one for TNG was a little bit of a disappointing ending.
Right. Well, do you think they hope to do like Voyager and Deep Space Nine as movies at some point?
I don't know. I've always hoped that at some point they would do something similar to what Picard became this season, which is let's just play, like put all the toys in the toy box and play. Like there's no reason, if they all live in this sort of overlapped universe, you don't need to bring back just TNG or just Deep Space Nine or just Voyager and do a movie or what else. Like, why not throw them all in the sandbox, make it a time travel story and bring in, Archer's Enterprise and Kirk's Enterprise, and like now, especially now that they're all under the same umbrella again, that now that Viacom CBS merger is done again, I think it would be great to just put all the toys in the toy box and play. Why couldn't you have a big adventure that has, bring back Miles O'Brien and bring back, all these different characters. They don't have to all get whoever's the most beloved characters from each of these franchises. Of course, they've waited so long now that, of course, we've lost some characters along the way. We've lost, René Beauchamp died, so no Odo. There are some losses in there that would be a little glaring at this point, but I think that would have been great to really just sort of mix it all up.
Right.
It's weird that like Nemesis ended up, I think, in a bad spot when it comes to budget versus box office, because it does look like they spent a fair amount of money on Nemesis, which is unfortunately very contrary to what they did with Star Trek Generations, where they absolutely cheaped out on, hey, let's just reuse the same bird of prey blowing up, and not even like, well, mirror image and put a filter on it so it's not so obvious, right? Like, they just had the same thing happen, and it's weird. It's like, well, you had what was like the most popular series, right? That you're starting with fresh and new here. So why did you cheap out on its premiere? And they did a little bit more for Star Trek First Contact, right? Like that first battle with the Borg is actually like a ton of budget, I'm sure. Insurrection sort of dips a bit. It's about the same, and then they spent more. It's like, well, why did you spend so much more then? Like, I think people got fatigued because it was like, all right, so relatively low budget Generations, pretty good First Contact, seemingly not as much budget, or maybe it was misapplied or something, like it didn't come out in what they were doing. Insurrection, and then you're pinning all this hope on Nemesis, where I kind of feel like, well, if you had just believed in your product and wowed people with Star Trek Generations, then you probably would be in a better spot, right? Yeah. And now when it comes to, well, will they do Voyager or Deep Space Nine? Like, maybe on CBS All Access, because the Next Generation was so much more massively popular than Deep Space Nine or Voyager ever were. So it would be hard to many years after the fact. Like, they're not talking about doing a TNG movie, right? Like, out in the theater. So like it would be hard to do. So I think series or limited series or one-off TV, but like streaming TV movie is probably the best path forward.
Yeah. Well, there was a good story this week. I'm trying to remember from where I saw it, and maybe it was Deadline, but I'll have to try and dig it out. But they were talking to, you know what it was? It was IO9. They do their little morning news gathering thing, so it was just a little bullet. But they were talking about, I think it was Alex Kurtzman, who's the sort of overall guru of Star Trek right now, and he said he had a meeting with the studio, CBS, to talk about plans for Star Trek, and he mapped out, he said that none of this is set in stone, none of this is guaranteed, but he mapped out from now till 2027. So he said, we talked about, well, we think this is going to be this series, and then when this one finishes, we're going to move on to this one, and he basically mapped out the next 7 years of Trek on CBS All Access / CTV Sci-Fi or whatever it is in Canada, or Amazon, or wherever it's airing, Netflix around the world. So, I mean, talk about Star Trek fatigue, but I mean, right now we're looking at, we've got Picard, we've got Discovery, we've got Lower Decks, we've got Prodigy coming, and Brave New World. What's the new one called?
Strange New World.
Strange New Worlds. I knew it was somewhere in there. So yeah, we've already got those. Plus, we already had word that they're going to do the Michelle Yeoh Section 31 series at some point. Although that one's an interesting one because she's in the future with them. So
is she?
Yeah. She's on board the Discovery.
Oh, right. Okay.
So I don't know if it's going to cover.
Which captain is she?
Well, yeah, she's. I don't know if it's going to cover an era where she is like it's a sort of a prequel to before she ends up like when she was sort of in that stretch, or if, I don't know. Who knows? Who knows what it's going to be? But it'll be interesting to see how that is played out. But yeah, we're talking about and that's just what we know about. Of course, there's probably a lot of other things in pre-production and planning and everything else. Interesting, but we're also in a world where and I think Jaime, you talked about it Tim, you mentioned it last week, right? That there was the part of the cast wants to do a Star Trek 4. Are they going to do that? Are they going to want to do more movie theater movies, or is Trek now just a TV show?
Yeah. Sorry, my dog's going to explode.
All right. we'll leave it there then.
All right. Well, next week then, I want to pick your brains because I watched the season finale of The Boys, and I don't know if you guys are up to date on The Boys.
I saw The Boys.
Yeah, I'm all up to date with that. So yeah, we can definitely talk about that.
We got to put our brains together on that one because I'm curious to hear what you guys think of that one.
So, have you seen it, Jaime, or no?
Yes, I saw the season finale.
Because the one thing I was thinking is it should have been called something other than The Boys at one point.
The Girls.
Boys don't get it done. Is that what we're going with?
The girls got it done. I was thinking as they're kicking the crap out of that one girl, thinking to myself, they named the show wrong. Anyway, gots to go.
Okay.
All right.
Talk to you soon, guys.
Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.